All right, welcome to episode 19 of Every Citizen Armed. Today's guest is going to be Brandon Jones. He is a candidate for the state of California governorship. Interesting guy, great conversation. He actually brought a lot of his opinions in there. I would really appreciate him sitting down with us. I think you're going to like what he's got to say, but at the same time, there's some things that some folks may not like, but that's the beauty of it is we're opening the conversation, and that's what we really want to see happen. So let's open the conversation with that. But first, we're going to pay the bills. Our sponsor on this is Firearms Legal Protection. They've been great to come on board with us. We really want you to go onto their site, take a look. If you're carrying a firearm, you need to be able to protect yourself legally, and this is going to give you the great options. I'm looking at their website right now, but I see you've got all kinds of options, whether it be individual, basic, or premium, or family. You need to take a look at this and see in ways it's going to be beneficial to you. We got to have these folks on here. They're helping us. They're sponsoring us. I really believe in their program. I've actually got rid of my last protection, and now we went on to these guys. You're going to save a lot of money, and if you go on there, you're going to find you're really going to need this to protect you. You don't know what's going to happen out there in the world. And type in ECA into the promo code, and you're going to get a special offer, which we'll describe a little bit during the episode. But yes, you want to make sure you're taking care of your family, taking care of yourself, and this way you're going to be covered. Go on to firearmslegal.com and type in ECA to get a special offer. Now let's get on to the show.
Every citizen armed ensures that every American patriot is prepped with knowledge, perspective, and firepower.
He counted on America to be passive. He counted wrong.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
All right, we're going to go and get started with the next episode of Every Citizen Armed. Today, we're joined by Brandon Jones, candidate for the state of California governorship. Let's get to know you, Brandon.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Chuck.
We appreciate you coming up. You're from San Diego.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Yeah.
So you're coming up into Bakersfield. It's a little bit warmer.
Yeah.
You get to adapt.
Yeah,
to that.
you bet. No, we're loving it. We're having a blast. Brought the wife up, so yeah.
Yeah, it's a different area until you come up here and you see it.
Yeah.
People have a lot of preconceived ideas about Bakersfield, but you come up, there's a lot of fun stuff to see.
Yeah.
A lot of history.
You bet.
So
you bet.
we appreciate you taking the trip. So
Absolutely.
So you're going to run for governor. You're running for governor now.
Yes, sir.
What in the world are you thinking?
Yeah, that's always the first question I get hit with. Yeah.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
Give us your origin. What kind of, give us a little bit of your background. Where are you from? What you did?
Yeah,
and so
you
forth.
bet. You bet. So not from California originally, but have spent in total about 15 years in Southern California. But grew up in a small town in Iowa. Grew up, grandpa had a pig farm. Dad worked in construction. Mom was a school teacher. Very kind of stereotypical Midwestern middle income upbringing. So grew up just south of Des Moines, a town called Indianola. It's about 10,000 people or so when I was
I've actually
growing
seen
up.
that.
Have you really?
Yeah,
Okay.
just on maps, and I think the company I work for has some business there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, so grew up there, and I should mention one detail. When I was a sophomore in high school, I had an opportunity to go to Japan for a year. And I bring that up because that really opened my eyes to a much larger world than I was accustomed to just in small town Iowa. And so I came back from a year abroad, graduated high school, and just really wanted to see the world. So I joined the military. I went into the Navy, did a couple years in the Navy, injured my knee and got out on medical, but got to see a little bit of the world through the military. And then after getting out of the military, kind of hopped around a bit and landed in Hollywood, of all places, just after 9/11. So
now what did you do in the military when you were in the Navy?
I was a sonar tech.
Okay. So,
Yeah, so it's on a frigate.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So now when you're out in the ocean, how long?
I had somewhat of a unique experience. The ship I was on went in for repairs quite a bit. So, but we did some trips. We went up to New York, and but the most I was out to sea was probably about a week at a time.
Oh.
And we would just do little 2-day excursions here and there. But yeah, I was stationed in Jacksonville for about a year and a half. Actually was in San Diego for about 6 months after boot camp. So I got to see, New York. We did Fleet Week in New York City.
Oh, that
so
had to be
was cool.
exciting.
That was nuts.
I bet.
Never experienced anything quite like that. But so yeah, I got to see a few places. Didn't do any overseas tours, but it was still a good experience. Yeah.
And then you came out and went to Hollywood? of all places?
Yeah, so I got in the military, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And so I went to some community colleges and kind of bounced around, did some odd jobs. And I caught the acting bug and landed at a school in Hollywood, which actually just recently closed down for whatever reason. But so moved out to Hollywood shortly after 9/11, and that was also a culture shock. Again, growing up small town Iowa, then going from that to West Hollywood, California. But yeah, that was my intro to Southern California. Yeah,
that's almost not fair. Yeah. I mean, to go down to West Hollywood.
Yeah,
I've only spent a little time down there, and
yeah,
it's not that's a culture shock coming from here to go to West Hollywood. I can imagine a little town in Iowa.
Yeah.
So now you did the acting. Did you get on anything? Were you on any shows?
Nothing noteworthy. I studied acting for about 3 years, and then in the acting world, you're trying to build up a demo reel, which is kind of like a video resume. And so you're taking on really any gigs you can. I was doing student films and kind of low, no budget films, nothing that would make like theaters or anything. I realized I need something to pay the bills. And so I actually started a children's entertainment company when I was 24 years old. So that really launched my career as an entrepreneur. And then I would be an entrepreneur for 20 years up until just a few years ago. But we would send entertainers to kids' parties and church events and social functions like clowns, magicians, face painters. And it grew statewide. Then it went into other states, and then eventually it got acquired. But that was really the launch of my career as a business owner was that business. Yeah,
I think that's one of the beauties of that. Get in and do what you find something you like, something you enjoy. And I think a lot of people don't realize the money that could be made in those type of businesses too.
Oh yeah,
we had a petting zoo for years.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, birthday parties, petting zoo at a feed store.
Yeah,
and you could do very well.
Yeah, love
and
it.
It's fun.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
How did your family feel about you coming out from Iowa and moving to Hollywood? I bet that was a little bit of shock for them too.
Yeah, I mean, again, growing up in Iowa, my parents, initially probably weren't huge fans of me going to California, but it was something I was dead set on, and they eventually got used to it. A lot of great memories in California. Not just launching my first company, but I met my wife in 2007 in Sun Valley, which is just north of Hollywood, and our first son was born at Kaiser in Los Angeles.
Okay.
But, year one being married, having a newborn, I was an entrepreneur, but a young entrepreneur, and we really struggled financially. And especially, it's one thing to have a business and it's just you got to pay for food and everything, but now supporting the wife and a young child. And so we kind of joined the California exodus and left, for about 10 years.
And where'd you go?
Initially, we went to Texas.
Okay.
Yeah, like a lot of people do.
Yep.
And we were there for about 5 years. And I kind of expanded that kids party company into Texas as well.
Okay.
So it was just crazy, Chuck. I mean, we before moving, my wife had some family that were there, and so they were kind of educating us on the real estate market there. We realized that we could build a brand new 4-bedroom house, and the mortgage payment would be $300 a month less than what we were paying for a small, rundown 2-bedroom apartment in Glendale. That's a hard offer to turn down,
You see a lot of these shows on HGTV or whatever, and you see these folks down there in LA, and they're buying a house for $1.4 million, and you go, that's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath.
I know.
And folks from Iowa look at that problem and go, what in the world is going on out there?
I know.
It is a different world down there.
Yeah, it totally is. It totally is. Yeah, and so we moved. Primarily for financial reasons, and I'm glad we did. But we were there for about 5 years. Yeah,
I think it gives you a little perspective too, going into politics.
Yeah.
Now you've seen different areas.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of folks from here moved to Texas.
Yeah.
To get away from some of the politics here. Now you've seen some of the politics back there. So you went through your businesses, and did that kind of lead to some of your beliefs that are going to follow you into politics?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm a born-again Christian. So I came to the Lord in California in 2006. So that definitely, influences largely my view, not just of California politics, but of government in general. Scripture teaches that government's established by God, right? So it's a necessary reality in society, but when it goes too far, when it has too much overreach, when it tries to replace the family and the church and other areas of society, it becomes dangerous, it becomes oppressive. And that's certainly just generally speaking, what we see in California.
Well, if I say, and I've joked about it, people talk about it, I think there's some reality to it, in my opinion. A lot of times progressivism sometimes tries to take the place of religion.
Yeah.
And I think that is definitely a mistake. I mean, Reagan said it best, right? So I'll use his words there. But, and when you get into that, so did you have thoughts of going into politics when you were looking at it back then?
No, it was never even on the radar. Being an entrepreneur is in my blood. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always trying to sell things, and so I had a 20-year career as an entrepreneur. And I still dabble in side things as an entrepreneur as well. But the turning point for me, and what really kind of where politics first entered my mind is kind of a next step for me, was so we moved back to California with the desire to serve. We didn't really know exactly what that was going to look like, but we come back, and in 2023, I sold off my businesses. So I had a national ad agency that I sold, and then I had quite a few real estate investments, not in California, but back in Missouri. I sold all those. And so I was really considering what to do next. And I wanted to serve. I also had just a desire to want to make California better for people. And as I began to kind of consider, okay, I had this desire, I had this love for the state, I had this love for the people. I want to contribute in some way to make California work better for the average person. And then I began to consider my professional background, and so many things that I've done fit so nicely into politics and what California needs. And so after kind of considering that reality and talking with my wife and us praying through it, I'm like, I think politics would be the next step. And so it became official December last year that I was a Republican candidate for California's next governor. Yeah.
So you just kind of jumping right into the deep end, though. You didn't start small, do a school board, didn't do, and that's you would see this progression.
Yeah.
You just got to. I'm just going to go for the big thing.
Yeah, and people have asked me that, like, why not start smaller? And it really boils down to two reasons. One is my extensive professional background and how that plays into politics, which I can get into more as we kind of go along here. But also, the office of governor, even as a Republican with a Democratic supermajority, a Republican governor can still do a lot. Even in a state that's largely run by Democrats. So there's the opportunity to really bring about real change. And so realizing that, also really kind of seeing the political landscape in California shifting more center. Yeah. I think if there's ever been an opportunity in the last 20 years for a Republican to be California's next governor, I think now is the time.
I would hope that some of the problems we've had recently and what's happening in our state would definitely wake up some people.
Yeah, and I think it has, yeah.
And in that, okay, so some of your business background will definitely lead into politics, but kind of guide us through that a little bit. What do you feel, will help get you into the politics that's really going to benefit California by using your previous experiences?
Sure, yeah. So just one area would be homelessness. So addressing homelessness. I spent, again, as part of that 20-year career as an entrepreneur, I spent 6 years in affordable housing. And when I say I spent 6 years in affordable housing, I'm not saying that I worked in affordable housing as an outsider looking in. My company directly purchased and rehabilitated nearly 100 single and multifamily dwellings, many of which were used to get homeless people off the streets into housing. I have sat in living rooms with homeless people that I've rented to. I've seen their struggles firsthand. I've seen exactly what works and what doesn't. I've been on the front lines of that issue for 6 years. And so I know how to fix that problem.
Was that mainly in LA? Was that mainly in LA, or where was this?
No, this is actually back in Missouri, but it's the same issue that it isn't. Homelessness is predominantly a California issue, I would say, because 1/3 of the homeless population does live in California. But the issue, by and large, is seen all throughout the country, as you know.
California has spent a tremendous amount of money, already on what we're gonna, it's gonna be worded as the homeless issue, the homeless problem, that we need a solution, and we've spent so many millions and millions of dollars with no accountability.
Yeah.
How do we get into that accountability side of it? You were doing it in Missouri. How do we find that accountability out here?
Yeah. So when it comes to accountability and government spending, and really the bottom line, and this touches on another issue too, which I'll get into as it relates to Restore California, which is the movement that I've also started.
Perfect.
Is I would argue that the average everyday Californian who genuinely loves the state, loves the people, wants to see real change happen, wants to see leaders held accountable, doesn't know how to do that as an individual, right? And so they're left feeling in a lot of ways helpless and frustrated. And so we hold leaders accountable, one, by collectively as a society understanding how do we hold our leaders accountable, right? And so there's an educational element to that as well, which we can talk about too. But yeah, there definitely needs to be accountability. We currently have a government that just keeps spending and taxing more and more, and the issues keep getting worse and worse. People are ready, as I've experienced just talking with folks, doing town halls and whatnot, but they want to understand, okay, how do I as an individual get involved with something that can hold our leaders accountable? And that really gets into the Restore California movement that I've launched.
Yeah, describe that a little bit, because I like the sounds of that. I think that's great.
Yeah.
What is Restore California really going to do? What is it?
Yeah.
What would be, if you're looking at the very end of that and it was all a success, what does that look like?
Yeah, so Restore California, really the mission is to make California a safer, more affordable, more prosperous state for all of us through bold common sense solutions. That's the mission statement behind Restore California. But really it provides an infrastructure, if you will, a forum for people to come together to collectively make change happen. Now this really gets into something that you've already hinted on is really a philosophy of politics. So I believe that, yes, we need government, we need leaders, of course, but the real power lies with the people. The real power lies with the people in a democracy. Now, in California, we have a form of direct democracy where people can add laws, remove laws, amend laws through a ballot measure. But most people don't understand that. They don't know how they can partake in that. And so, because they're not educated in that regard, largely we see government that's just gone astray.
Yeah, I think we see that all over. I was telling you earlier, I was on the school board for a while, and I saw a lot of the things there that frustrated me greatly.
Yeah.
And I see the groups that have all the power.
Right.
And it is definitely not in the best interest of the people in a lot of ways.
Right.
How do you go about fighting the teachers union? I mean, and I hate to say the word fighting, but ultimately that's what it turns out being.
Yeah.
You have to find a way to get that turned around a little bit.
You bet.
How do you do that as a governor and go try and step in there and you're going to help educate a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Not just the third and fourth graders coming up.
Yeah.
What can the governor do to help with that?
Yeah, so there's two ways to look at that. First, the governor, as a single individual, again, has a lot of power, right? You have line item vetoes, you have executive orders. There's things that the governor can do, whoever that person is, that can influence California significantly. But again, the real power lies with the people. And so, again, this is where I think I differ from other candidates. For me, by and large, it's about uniting the people of California to collectively make change happen. So, again, that's why I've started the Restore California movement to do that. So my difference, my approach in pursuing politics, again, is to bring people together to restore California to a place that works for all of us. Because collectively, as a people, we're more powerful, we're more effective than any single political leader. I believe that firmly. Let me give you an example. Proposition 36.
Yes.
Right? For anyone listening who's not overly familiar with Prop 36, for years, we had Prop 47 and Prop 57, which essentially just allowed criminals to be criminals without any real You go back to the accountability, right?
Well, it does. I owned a grocery store for many years.
Yeah.
And what we went through with the shoplifting and people said, oh, well, they're just stealing this. They're just stealing that. It was only $5. It was only $4.
Yeah.
Well, even back then, they would get in a lot of trouble if they were repeat offenders. Prop 47 took a lot of that away, to where what we used to do in the past, we could certainly not do now. So, Prop 36 coming on board. How is that really going to help folks nowadays? Yeah.
So, and I'll just tell you a quick story. Just you mentioned the grocery store. My wife and I, was about a year ago. My wife likes to go to Ross a little too much, but so we're at Ross, and there's this guy walking around the store, and he's got a bag open. He's just putting stuff in the bag. Yeah. I mean, he's not even trying to be secretive about it. And then he just walks out of the store, and I'm witnessing this, and the clerks know what, they even have the loss prevention guy that's at Ross. And I went up to the clerk and I said, you going to call the police? This guy's just walking out with stolen goods. And they didn't want to press charges because they knew that there was nothing that could be done because he was stealing below that threshold, right? But here's the point, how Prop 36 ties in with collectively people taking action. So Prop 36, reclassified felonies that under Prop 47 were really misdemeanors. It reclassified them properly back to being felonies, right? But here's the point. Prop 36 was not a movement by Sacramento. It wasn't a movement by Gavin Newsom. In fact, Newsom was against it.
Right.
It was a movement by the people. It was a movement by the people. It was a grassroots movement by the people of California who said, enough's enough. We're tired of our businesses and our homes being burglarized and vandalized. And the point is that even though the Democratic supermajority was against Prop 36, it became the law of the land anyway because of the power of the people. The power of the people uniting to collectively take action. That's where the power lies, Chuck, is the people. Yeah.
Well, and I'm hoping people look at that and realize there is a lot of power they can use.
Yeah.
If we could get out there and get them educated.
Yeah,
And get them informed.
Yes.
I think you're absolutely right saying people they just don't know how to help out.
Exactly.
They may want to help,
Yeah.
but they don't know how.
Yeah.
So I think that's, and I've watched that, and I hate the idea of watching people just shoplift like mad.
Yeah. And, so if you were to think about, okay, well, what does that look like? Like, what did Prop 36 look like? Okay, well, you've got to get something on the ballot, you could maybe need to get like 1 million signatures, right? Well, how are you going to get those? Well, you go out and you hire firms. They may charge, $5 or $6 per signature. So now you need $5-10 million to get the signatures. And, who can pull that off? Right. But if you have a movement where you build the coalition, you have a built-in coalition of people that they're already together in a community as a coalition, well, then you don't need to hire all these consultants and all these contractors to get the signatures needed. You have that in-house coalition already in place. That's what the Restore California movement is.
How do we get the general populace to start talking again? That's a real problem. When you look at it, and I see the reports, and I see where you left and right just can't even sit down and talk anymore.
Yeah,
you can't. I mean, I have good friends that were very liberal.
Yeah,
they definitely don't agree with me politically, but we can sit down and talk.
Yeah,
disagree. I have no problem with that.
Sure.
But what I'm noticing more and more, you just can't.
Yeah.
A lot of folks, they will not have that conversation. How do we get them to really start talking? We get to open this dialogue back and realize it's for their own good.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you do to step in there? I mean, like your town. Tell me about your town halls. You've done some of them now.
Yeah, the number of those. Yeah.
That's got to be interesting.
It is. Yeah, and not everybody that shows up is a Republican.
Well, no.
We've had people. In fact, we had one lady show up, and I kind of she had made some comments online that she was going to come and protest, and she was gathering people, and they were going to come and protest the event. Well, ironically, the event that night, had a lot of rain come in, so they couldn't protest. And so she came into the town hall, and I had a chance to talk with her. Somebody who was going to protest the event. And Chuck, and I know this is going to seem overly simplistic, but I think this is the answer to your question, is we have to be willing to listen. We just have to be willing to listen to other people's perspectives, even if we don't agree with them, just hear them out. And I think being great listeners is going to open the dialogue. People are used to not being heard, and they're used to being, insulted and blasted for their beliefs. And so I think it really starts with listening. Like that's the first step.
I think it was a wise man told me one time that you never learned a darn thing with your mouth open.
I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah, and I have a hard time with that at times. Obviously, I will definitely talk a lot. So in that, we just got to get the conversation started. Yeah. So that's another reason I really like the idea of you coming up. How you brought up your Christian belief earlier. How was that fitting in? Does it have any effect in any way that is either going to help or hurt, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think both. It's something I can't shy away from because it's so central to who I am. But yeah, I mean, there's some people that just hear the word Christian come out of my mouth, and to them it's filled with a lot of negative connotations, and so they automatically make a judgment call. There's some people that hear it, and it's a positive thing. So it just depends on who the person is. But at the end of the day, really, when I look at politics and government in general, what is the role of government from a biblical worldview? It is to uphold a biblical standard of righteousness, right? Mm-hmm. So like I was saying before, it's not meant to replace every area of society. It's meant to be limited in that sense. It's meant to be limited. And I think that in California, as I'm talking to people, who are, yes, Republican, but also Democrat or independent, people are largely looking for a new perspective. They realize that what we currently have going is not working. And so I think hearts are softened, maybe ears are opened more than they have been in the past. So that's been my experience.
We obviously have a big problem with the border.
Yeah.
Now, not as big a problem today as we did a year and a half ago.
Right.
Even 7 months ago, 8 months ago.
Right.
How do we, as a governor, what can you do there?
Yeah.
What would be your ideas to help, protect the border? We got to have a border.
Yeah.
But with that, you've got to do something with the folks who do want to come here legally, and the ones that are here illegally.
Sure.
Where does the governor step in on that? And then how would you use that, that enforcement power that you do have as a governor?
Yeah, well, I think first it goes back to the philosophy of politics. I think everything needs to start with a simple question: what is best for the residents of California? I think that's just a healthy initial question to ask. So as governor, one thing, we need to do away with the ridiculous sanctuary policies that help protect people who are here illegally. The governor also needs to work with other federal agencies like ICE. There needs to be that cooperation to get people out of here who are here illegally. Now, we should welcome anyone who wants to come here legally. I realize that in some cases it can take an unnecessarily lengthy amount of time for people to go through that process. So we need to, revisit, we need to reform our immigration laws. That's a conversation for another time. But yeah, we need to, look, either we have a border and we secure our border, or we don't. I've heard some people say, well, I'm for a secure border, but what about people who are undocumented workers? Like, they contribute a lot to our society. But again, you can't have it both ways. You just can't have it both ways. You can't say that, well, we only want people to come here legally, but if they come here illegally, we'll still allow it. I mean, come on. You can't have it both ways.
Does the governor have any authority to make legal immigration a little easier? I don't know. That's why I'd be curious on that. Is it, or is that all federal?
Yeah. Well, the governor can, through the power of executive order, there can be more cooperation with federal agencies. So that would be one way. But the governor, again, through the power of the veto, can also make it more difficult for, cities like Los Angeles, for example, to, utilize laws that, again, keep illegals in place. And so, those would be a few ways.
Could the governor establish a guest worker program without having to go through the federal government? And I think the new administration might have a way to work with that, but is that something you would support, I guess I should ask, is a guest worker program? Again,
I believe for anyone to work in the United States, they need to be here legally.
Right.
I mean, that's just my firm stance, yeah. Now the governor can't create new laws without going through the legislature.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I wasn't sure where the executive, Lord knows, we're seeing a lot of executive orders right now.
I know.
And I wish the Congress would do a little more and we wouldn't have to have them all in that fashion. But we're seeing them both ways, federally and statewide. So that's got to lead to a lot of the homeless issues also, I would think.
Yeah.
And with that border, we're seeing a lot of drugs that come over the border.
You bet.
Which to me is leading even more so to the homeless issue at times, whether it be drugs, crime, mental illness, and the drugs leading to mental illness. And we've got to find a way to address all those issues at the same time. I don't know how you do it as a governor. You'd have your hands full. Yeah.
Well, and that's why the vision, the plan to restore California, to continue to use that word, must be comprehensive, because these issues can't be addressed in silos, because they're all interconnected. Like, to your point, homelessness feeds drug addiction, homelessness feeds crime feeds homelessness. But really, Chuck, at the end of the day, what it boils down to, and where I believe a lot of these issues stem from, is a breakdown of the nuclear family.
Oh, absolutely.
Breakdown of the nuclear family. And so whatever the plan is, whatever the solution is, whatever the vision is, has to reach all the way down to the family level and be about encouraging and strengthening families. And in fact, I've authored a book called California's Comeback, and it gets into that philosophy very deeply as it relates to really getting down to the family level. But that's where these issues ultimately stem from, is a breakdown of the family. In fact, just a quick statistic, when we look at crime, 85% of young males that are incarcerated in California come from single-parent households. So you strengthen families, you encourage families, and it's going to, the ramifications for that are going to bleed into these other areas positively that we see currently. Yeah.
With that, we've seen the crime rates go up in a lot of areas. I know that gets reported in different fashions, so it doesn't look like it's going up, but you sure feel it.
Yeah.
And a lot of our audience, I mean, granted, the name of our podcast is Every Citizen Armed.
Right.
the governor has a lot of power when it comes to gun laws and gun rights in this state. Maybe more so gun rights than gun laws.
Yeah.
Where is your stance on the Second Amendment? Where do you feel that?
Yeah, I mean, I fully support the Second Amendment and the rights that come along with that. As we were talking earlier, growing up in Iowa and spending time in Missouri, that's just that was the culture that I was brought up in. I mean, people owned guns, people carried around their guns. I mean, I was around hunting, and it was part of my upbringing. It wasn't until I came to California that I realized, okay, well, not not every part of the country holds to those beliefs.
Yeah.
But really, when it comes to the gun issue, and it's really part of a larger systemic issue that we see in California. It is the attack on our liberties, on our freedoms. The attack on our Second Amendment rights is just one area of that. But the government, as it stands right now, not everyone who's in government, but by and large, is trying to take away our freedoms. Right. So, yeah, the Second Amendment is under attack for those reasons, yeah.
Can the governor step in there and do something? I know our current administration here it can't do anything against the guns, so it keeps running up extra taxes, make it a little harder, make it a little more difficult. Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem with background checks to an extent. It doesn't take 10 days to do what we go through.
Yeah.
But is there a way for you to make, as a governor, and executive orders, or would have to all go through legislation to make adjustments in certain gun laws, take away that 22% tax?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think to answer the question, the governor just needs to follow the law. I mean, there's a lot of laws in California as it relates to gun rights that go against Supreme Court rulings. So just following the law would be the right thing to do. So now people can get a CCW, but there's so many places they can't carry their gun that, if you take one step in the wrong direction, now you're breaking the law. So you've made it so difficult for people to obey the law that, it's virtually the same as not being able to carry a gun around at all. So being able to follow those laws, I think, or willing to follow those laws would be a step in the right direction for sure. Yeah,
I've talked to people who got rid of their CCW because they figured there's so many places they can't carry it anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
So really, it was more of a hindrance. For them. So it's part of that. It seems like there was some executive order in there that has caused some of that. So as a governor, you could repeal some of those executive orders.
You could repeal those, and I think the argument is, well, by adding more taxes to the purchase of firearms or ammunition, it's estimated that there's $160 million a year that's going to go and fund these anti-violent, campaigns or, whatever they say they're going to use the money for. Probably doesn't even make its way into those avenues. But yeah, we need to follow the law. It comes back to the question: what is best for the residents of California, and remove things that are an attack on our liberties.
Yeah, and it's not CCW, it is carriers that are actually committing the crimes.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. We definitely push and support legal gun ownership, but also responsible gun ownership.
100%. Well, and if the argument is, well, guns kill people, so we need to get rid of guns, I mean, that's a fallacy, right?
Sure.
So, okay, let's just follow that logic to its end conclusion. Well, cars kill people, so should we get rid of cars? Sugar leads to diabetes, which kills 100,000 people a year. Should we get rid of sugar?
Right.
I mean, this is a prejudice. It's an attack on guns specifically. Yeah. So the logic is, that's not the real reasoning behind the motive.
No, I don't think it's. To me, it's always been about control.
It's about control. It's an attack on freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
More and more every day. So that's when I see that, it frustrates me to no end.
Yeah.
Except there are so many places that I drive up and down this state, and you'll carry a firearm with me, and there's places I can't go.
Right.
I was driving through San Francisco the other day, and I thought about that. I said, because in San Francisco they don't, they have city ordinances, which I think are very unconstitutional. Yeah. And I think they've actually lost, but they still try and make it to where, and I got to get out of this city.
I know.
If I'm carrying a firearm here and I get pulled over.
I know.
They'll run my license and find out there it is.
Yeah. So it's it's an attack on freedom, whether it's gun ownership or giving parents. I'll give you one example. Our son had to go in. This isn't related to guns, but it's still related to an attack on freedom. My son had a growth in his neck, had to go in and get it removed. My son was 14 at the time. The doctors didn't even want to talk to us as parents. They wanted to have the conversation just with our son, right? So you're removing parents out of the picture. You're removing people's liberties when it comes to gun rights. You just see it everywhere. It's an attack on freedom is what it boils down to.
You know, when we talk about crime and what's happening in our state at times, when I look at punishment that goes along with the crimes, people are going to take care of themselves. They've got their firearms, going to take care of that. But there's going to be times that people are going to get arrested. Yeah. I actually was in a conversation with a guy yesterday. He works for the Department of Corrections. And we've changed our laws so much to where brought in 2 inmates. Yeah. One fella, he was convicted of burglary. Yeah. He got 13 years in prison. Mm-hmm. Other inmate that he was receiving in, he had 34 charges of lewd and lascivious conduct with a minor. Yeah. He got 7 years. Yeah. How do we get to where we can actually get back? I mean, in my mind, 34 counts of lewd and lascivious, he should just go away forever. Yeah. Well, I have other thoughts of what should happen to that. But he should be taken out of the gene pool. But that's my opinion. I don't expect everybody to feel that way. But there's definitely a problem. I mean, burglary is wrong. Don't get me wrong. I don't care if him getting 13 years, depending on what the situation was. But when it comes down to it, that other fellow probably should have got 40. Yeah. How do we fix that? Yeah. I mean, when it comes to, look at 2022, crime is up 6%, California statewide. And under the Newsom administration, it's always been about lowering our prison populations, right? And this is really what, going back to Prop 47 and Prop 57, that's what those propositions were designed to do, was to lower prison populations, making it easier for these people to come out of prison and get back on the streets. But, you just rod from Peter to pay Paul, right? Okay, the prison populations may have gone down, but crime went up. Here's the thing about crime statistics is that, statistics are an interesting thing because they're only as reliable as the data that's behind them. Yes. So people weren't reporting crime as much because they didn't believe anything could actually be done. Right. So there was more crime that was actually being reported, but because crime stats go on reported crime, it seemed that crime was lower than it actually was. When it comes to crime, though, to answer your question, it's really a twofold approach. What you're going to hear a lot as it relates to crime is the law enforcement side. Okay, we need to make sure that law enforcement is properly funded and that they just have the ability to do their jobs. I talk to cops all the time on the campaign trail, and they tell me all the time that they just feel so hamstrung from being able to actually do their job effectively. So we need to make sure they're properly funded. We need to make sure that they have the ability to do their job. We need to build on the efforts of Prop 36, but that's the law enforcement side. The other side you don't hear a lot about is the reentry side. So what happens when people, they've served their time, they get out of prison, what is their path to actually re-enter society? Mm-hmm. Well, if they can't find meaningful employment and if they can't, afford a place to live, well, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to revert right back to a life of crime and homelessness, and then the whole cycle just repeats itself. So we have to look at it from a law enforcement side and a re-entry side. That makes up what I believe a comprehensive solution to addressing the crime problem. As much as I wouldn't like to see another committee, another group pop up that the state pays for, it would be great to see some one gentleman in particular, he's a family member, but he was a correction officer and then parole agent. Okay. We talked a lot about that, actually. He was on here. Brian was on here some time back. Grab some folks like that who were in the industry and put them on a committee. Yeah. And have them come up with some ideas of how we could get these folks re-entered. Yeah. We got to change the prison system. Yeah. Completely. Have you toured any prisons? Yeah.
Jails, not prisons, but I've been in some jails, yeah.
I would recommend anybody, if you ever have a chance, go tour a state prison. Yeah. It will definitely convince you not to be there. Yeah. I toured one, and it was in December in the Valley, and it was amazing. I tell you, I'll never commit a crime in my life because I could not imagine that place in July. It was rough.
Well, I remember, maybe it's a program that's still out there. Remember Scared Straight?
Oh, yeah.
20 years ago?
Yeah.
It's still a thing, but...
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. It goes along the lines of what you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that had some great ideas behind it. I think it got corrupted. We were just talking about that last night, actually, about what was the best prison movie, and talking to the guys who are actually working in the prisons about what it was. And it was at American Me, I think it was. It was that guy really told you what it's like in prison.
Okay.
And it is horrible.
Yeah.
And I would hope more people would see how bad it is in there. They don't want to go there.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do we get them to come out and be productive members of society and take that and and realize there's not everybody can be rehabilitated,
Sure. Yeah.
but the ones that can.
Yeah.
And I think that starts, I years ago, I heard a statistic when I was on the school board that the Department of Corrections will set their projections for the future population on fourth grade literacy.
Yeah.
Well, now it's third grade literacy, I guess. So if you have X amount of third graders that are illiterate, that's going to be what percentage you're going to have in the prisons in 20 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is, to me, was such a sad statistic because you can see the problem developing and we're not fixing it.
Well, then that ties in with the crisis on schools.
Yeah.
So you see how it's all interconnected. I mean, statistically, only 30% of fourth graders are proficient in reading and math. So exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. So you have an attack on the public schools, and then that only feeds into crime and homelessness, and these issues are all interconnected. Yeah.
Very much so. I was talking with the principal at one of the local high schools, and I strongly believe in mentor programs. I have felt that growing up, I could have easily been a lost youth. I mean, I was for a while.
Okay.
But I come across some good mentors when I was young. One happened to be a school teacher, which is interesting. Crazy liberal school teacher in my world now. When I look at him, great guy, Mr. Shaw. I always go back to thoughts on him. And here I was, seventh grader, and he made a big impression. And then there was another gentleman named Daryl Critch they didn't realize they were mentors to me, but they were.
Yeah.
And so talking to this principal, and I said, I think what you're missing is you need a mentor program. Yeah. All these schools need it. I think the young coming in. And I said, where do we need to start?
Yeah.
And his statement back was, you got to start with freshman boys. He said, if a freshman boy goes into high school and if he fails that first semester, there's 64% of those kids are going to drop out.
Yeah.
They're going to drop out.
Yeah.
We've got to find a way to keep them in school.
Right.
And that all ties together.
Yeah.
I don't think college is the answer to everything by any stretch.
I agree.
There's a lot of I love Mike Rowe. He does an amazing job.
Yeah.
I think we need to get him more and more.
Yeah.
Get him on your cabinet. If you get elected, you need him.
I was just watching it today. Yeah.
He lives in the Bay Area. He's a California guy.
Yeah.
Let's get him involved.
Yeah.
But I think that, how do we set it up where we could do mentors?
Well, first of all, Chuck, we're speaking the same language. It comes down to the family. It comes down to the family. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about specifically crime, people come out of prison, that kind of thing. Now, what you're talking about is, okay, let's prevent that altogether by addressing, mentoring youth. And that's certainly part of it as well. But it has to do with keeping people in a healthy family environment. Even if their biological family doesn't offer that kind of love and support, we need to get them in that kind of an environment. And these mentoring programs that you're talking about, like Big Brother, Big Sister, those kind of programs, is certainly one avenue. But going back to the crime topic, and people are coming out of prison, okay, hypothetically, they have no family to go back to.
Right.
Okay, they're a convicted felon. Who's going to hire them? How are they going to get meaningful employment? And even if they have meaningful employment, I mean, statistically, you got to earn 3 times the minimum wage in California just to afford rent.
Yes.
So, you have the cost element too. The answer is not more government, more taxes.
Right.
More government, more taxes. Right. That's currently the solution. More government, more taxes. We all know that doesn't work. We need to partner. The public sector needs to partner with the private sector. And when I say private sector, I'm not just talking about local businesses. I'm talking about communities as well, incentivizing communities to volunteer their time as well. But we need to have, job training programs that could be offered by local businesses. Maybe they get some kind of a tax credit for doing that.
Absolutely.
But I know a lot of people would just love to be able to offer their skills to help other people, even if they don't have a financial incentive to do so. So partnering with the private sector, again, to get these people into environments where they feel loved and encouraged and they're building a skill that gives them a sense of dignity. So that would be one step in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And my wife and I talk about this all the time. You see all these abandoned grocery stores around the state now. There's tons of them.
Yeah.
Huge buildings just sitting empty.
Yeah.
And we felt that it would be a great way for, and I hate to say government get involved because the government tends to mess things up. I like your community idea. For the state and the county to work with the community, let the community lead it, and they can assist. why would you not take that 100,000 square foot building that's just decaying
Yeah.
and the homeless are going to burn it down?
Yeah.
Let's turn that into a reentry center
Yeah.
coming out of the prisons.
Yeah.
And we could take these. I mean, you've got all the structure in there. You've got all the plumbing. You
Right.
could actually make that a bunch of units.
Yes.
To
Yes.
where, why not? I mean, I look at a Food Max that's been sitting empty over here for 4 years now.
Yeah.
And that would make a great reentry center for guys, or,
Yeah.
I wouldn't put guys and girls in the same one necessarily,
Yeah.
but if that's what needs to happen, it needs to happen.
Yeah.
And start your program there. Start your welding program.
Yeah.
I don't know how familiar you are with Kern County. I know you're getting more and more, but oil is a huge part of this county.
Yeah.
I've talked to folks outside of Kern County in California. They don't realize that we drill so much oil here.
Yeah.
Kern County it's the fourth largest county or oil reserve in this state. This country.
Yeah.
in
I
this
think I read that just the other day, in fact. Yeah.
Yeah, it has more oil than the majority of the counties in Texas.
Yeah.
There's a great place for those guys to go to work.
Yeah.
I think that's something I've thought about a lot.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of thoughts over the years, but that's one that really popped up. Like, I like that idea. Help them come out and do some job training.
Exactly. And so you asked the question, which is so obvious, is, well, why isn't that happening? Well, because it doesn't fit the current political mindset that's held by many, which is more taxes, more government. Right? And that mindset is leading to small businesses being crushed, and it just doesn't fit in that frame of mind. So it boils down to philosophy. Yeah.
I'd be really curious if people could point out how many times more taxes, more government has really made anything better.
Yeah.
I haven't seen much of that. If anything.
Right. And I think that's why there's such a shift taking place in California. I mean, look at the recent presidential election. Was it 10 counties went from blue to red?
Yeah.
I mean, that's significant. And I'm not saying California is necessarily red, but we're seeing that transformation take place politically.
And I think that would be a big factor. We see that change, and that was actually one of the questions today was, how would your administration work with the new federal administration?
Yeah.
I mean, that is a change. So what would you do? How would you work with the Trump administration to solve some of these problems? What could you do with them?
Yeah. So going back to what I was saying about, public sector partnering with private sector, but the public sector also needs to partner, from a state perspective, needs to partner with other federal agencies as well. Yeah. So we have to work in cooperation with one another. We may not agree on everything, but again, we need to at least have that dialogue and those discussions to work together in a cooperative fashion, for sure.
I think if people start talking, they'd find out they agree a lot more than they realize.
I think so, because a lot of these issues aren't partisan, right? We all want less crime. We all want better schools. There are issues that are partisan, but most of these are just not. The path to get there, yes, there's different thoughts, different ideas, but the issues themselves are not partisan issues.
Well, and I've always, we had Kevin McCarthy here as our representative for a long time.
Yeah.
And he took a lot of heat because he wasn't conservative enough, and he compromised. Yeah. I don't care who you are. You're going to compromise. You have to – not everybody's going to be as hard right as I am. Not everybody's going to be as hard left as Newsom. Yeah. But the majority of folks are going to be that 80% in the middle.
Yeah. Exactly.
How do we get them talking? Yeah, that's always just drove me nuts. Start the conversation.
Yeah, and you got to go to where the people are. I mean, you look at even like the younger voter base, the 18 to mid 20s. They're largely inactive politically, but we're seeing that shift. But where are they going? They're going to podcasts like this.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to go to where the people are and where they're listening, where they're having those conversations, and yeah, you got to go to where the people are. Open up the dialogue. Yeah.
Well, and I wish sitting at lunch the other day, and I was watching this family, and it was obvious. It was like a grandfather and a couple of his grandsons who were in their teens, maybe early 20s. And here they've got their grandfather who's probably 64, 65. And I'm watching these two young men, and they're on their phone the whole time. They've got this grandfather sitting there. They could get all this information from all this knowledge and intelligence. Put your phones down. My God, and I'm just as guilty at times. I think if we could eliminate these phones in a lot of ways, it's the true epitome of a double-edged sword. I mean, that's like, got to have them. but I think it's definitely taken a lot of our intelligence away. You don't have to know anything. You can find all the information you want. You don't have to know a doggone thing.
Yeah, I know. And that, like we were chatting about earlier, is that, technology is great, but it has sort of diminished the, the personal element in relationships as well. And so, yeah, we got to be careful there. But yeah, I agree. We need to kind of restore healthy dialogue and just open up the conversation to these issues. And, Chuck, when I'm doing these town halls, even not town halls, just engaging with people on the street, I'm learning so much. Just as one quick example, I've had several people talk about how different policies have oppressed people in the fishing industry, kind of learning from that perspective as well. And so it's just been great. It's just been great to learn from other folks in the state, yeah.
I had a fun conversation with a lady up north in Eureka, California the other day about the windmills.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because that's a big topic right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're hearing about the windmills off the East Coast and hurting the whales. And even President Trump talked about it on the Joe Rogan show, which surprised me. He was very informed. He knew. Yeah. And she's on the windmill committee because they're going to put windmills in Northern California, a mile off of shore.
Yeah.
Now, I'm really curious to find out what that's going to do to the whale migration. Yeah. That's going to open up a lot of conversations that people are going to be uncomfortable with, because now you've got the environmentalists fighting with the environmentalists.
Yeah.
That's going to be. Yeah. And she had some good comments on it, and she's a supporter of the windmills, and didn't have any great answers for me, but I would love to learn more about those.
Yeah.
So, but it was a place where you had two different people, people with two different opinions really sitting down and talking about it.
Right.
And you just can't do that anymore.
I know. And these are complex issues. And but gosh, you look at the environmental situation. I mean, so we talk about families. At least my philosophy is that the breakdown of the nuclear family has really exacerbated so many of the issues that we see in our state. But environmentalism gone too far, I would say, is the biggest culprit. Is the biggest culprit.
It's not a religion.
Yeah.
They want it to be. Yeah. But it is in their mindset. Yeah. It's we all drive by the windmills out there in Tehachapi and down there in Palm Springs area. And what was interesting is when we ran into the drought situation here some years ago, the solar panels, those take a lot of water.
Yeah.
So all those solar fields down there in Palm Springs, they're running out of water.
Yeah.
Well, now they're useless.
Yeah.
So you can have all this alternative energy, but you got to have it all.
Right.
You got to have it all. And we need the oil coming out of Kern County.
Yeah.
That's probably not a popular thing for you. I think we should be 3 states, but
I've heard that before too. Yeah.
Yeah. I've felt that way since I was a kid. And where we're at right here, I think the border should go east to west at a certain point. I think I can't remember who I was talking to, but maybe it was Stan Ellis, but it was somebody else. But I felt Fraser Park, east to west somehow, and Lodi, east to west. That way all 3 states got a port.
Yeah.
This state would be rich beyond belief.
Yeah.
What is Central California would be one of the richest states in the nation.
Yeah.
We just got to get rid of LA and San Francisco and we'd be set. But the state of Jefferson might be upset with us though. I think they'd be very disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll break off on their own eventually. So now, and you mentioned you're married.
Yeah.
So I met your wife earlier. How does she feel about you doing this?
Yeah, it was, it's definitely a shock. I mean, it's something that we talked about a lot before I actually made the decision to run. But yeah, again, it wasn't something that was on our minds up until, last year. So it did take a lot of just consideration and conversation. But I mean, she's totally on board now, and she comes with me to the town halls, and we've just turned it into a family event. I mean, our kids come along with us, and they sit in and they hear me do my presentations, and they get to meet other folks too. So we've just really tried to make it not a me campaign, but really an us campaign.
How old are your kids?
15, 13.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they're right there. Pretty impressionable at that time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's huge for them to see you do this, though.
Thank you. I feel the same way. Yeah, and I think, initially they're like, I don't want to go to these political campaigns, Dad. It's not, I'm interested. And then now it's kind of like, oh, I kind of like learning about these ideas and meeting people. So I think they're turning the corner.
Yeah, that's, I mentioned earlier when I was on the school board, my daughters would comment when I came home about seeing me on the news, and they're like, "You didn't have a good meeting today, Dad. You looked awful red today, Dad." It could be very frustrating, and the kids get to see things that you don't necessarily feel they should, but in a long way, they probably should.
Yeah.
I think it's beneficial. So it's a family affair.
It is a family affair, and one thing I love about the people of California is that the people of California are brave and they're courageous people. And when you and even doing this and kind of leading this movement, it's really encouraged people to kind of tap into that courage that they already have. And so going back to you mentioned about my boys seeing me do this, that's my hope for them as well, to kind of instill a sense of, okay, live a life of bravery and courage, fighting for the right things. Mm-hmm. And so my hope is that'll be instilled in them, but Lord willing. Lord willing.
Well, and I often told my kids, I've joked about it forever. I learned my ideas about being a man from watching John Wayne movies. It was, I didn't have the best example when I was young.
Okay.
Alcoholic dad and all that stuff. So I had those couple mentors, and then watching those John Wayne movies.
Yeah.
That definitely had some influence on where I feel where it should be. And I think more people should watch some John Wayne movies. I think you'd be a little happier. Yeah. But so going into this, you got more town halls coming up?
We do. So we've done 4 town halls in San Diego. So that's been great. And then our next stop, God willing, with the town halls anyway, is Anaheim.
Okay.
So that'll be in about a month and a half or so. But we're already kind of starting conversations with local leaders in Orange County. And that's the plan.
And when is the election for this?
Yeah, so it'd be November 2026.
So we're a little ways away.
Yeah, the primary is June, but we're starting early.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Yeah, I think you're going to be very popular in the Central Valley. I would highly recommend getting as many town halls up here as you can. I think you'll find Bakersfield is definitely be very welcoming to you to get out and talk to some of these folks, and you're going to talk with a couple of local folks here tomorrow, I understand.
Yeah, I got a few news interviews tomorrow, so that'll be good. Yeah,
that's really good.
You bet.
So what have you being that you're in Bakersfield, what have you enjoyed most? You came in yesterday, right?
Just came in yesterday. Went to Steakhouse last night. It was amazing. What was it? I already forgot the name.
KC?
We went to KC, but they were closed because of Easter Sunday.
Yeah, probably.
We went to Hungry Hunter. Yes, that's what it was. Yeah, so that was really good. And then we're staying at the Padre.
Oh, you stayed at the Padre?
Yeah.
That's some classic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's classic Bakersfield right there.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, they restored that some years ago now. I mean, at one point that was pretty dilapidated.
Was it really?
Oh, yeah. And they came through and really, and it's turned into a pretty hot spot at certain times, at certain nights. That nightclub downstairs gets going.
Okay, yeah.
But great restaurant. One thing Bakersfield is very good about, we have some great restaurants.
Yeah.
You could get, I don't know why it is. We were talking about this. I actually have a catering company too, but Bakersfield is a going out town. They love to go out and eat.
Yeah.
Restaurants, they're always packed.
Yeah.
So
we'll
have to talk afterwards. We'll go through some of the locals you need to hit. Since you're going to be here tonight anyway.
Love it. Yeah.
You got to get over, get some Basque food. Right across the street is, and on the road is Benji's.
Benji's, okay.
Okay. No, but me and Monday, they're closed. Aren't they? That's right. They're closed on Monday. That's too bad.
Well, I'm sure there's other options. That's a big thing for my wife and I, and our kids aren't with us on this trip, but we just love exploring new places to grab a bite. So.
Oh yeah, we'll have to look at that. Wool growers would be the Basque moved into this community years and years ago from the French Basque and Spanish Basque. Sheep herders came in, and they've done very, very well here. So we have more Basque restaurants in this town than probably any other town in the state.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great food. Yeah. If you like pickled tongue, it's pretty neat. But I'm not a big pickled tongue fan, but I'll eat the other stuff. So
I'll try to convince my wife to try that.
Yeah. So, and what would be the best thing? What do you want people really to know? I mean, about you going into this, you're kind of unknown in some ways.
Yeah.
I think you're probably pretty popular down there, but we got to get to know you up here.
Yeah.
How do you want to get it out? I mean, Restore California is great, but what do you really want them to know about you?
Yeah, I want people to know that I'm just an everyday Californian. I mean, I'm not a politician, as I've already mentioned. This is my first go at politics, but I'm just an everyday person, and I feel the pain of living in California just like everybody else does. I know what it's like to start a business here. I started 2 in California and feel the oppressive regulations. I know what it's like to not be able to send my kids to public school. I know what it's like to struggle to afford to buy a home. I mean, so I feel the pain that your audience feels.
Yeah.
And that's what drives me to want to do this is a love for the state, a love for the people, but also somebody who has lived and experienced these pains as well. So that's me. That's why I'm doing this.
Central Valley, one of the things here. What's your opinion on that high-speed rail?
It's just ridiculous. I mean, you got what $1 million a day being spent on what? I mean, it's a rail that's going nowhere. It's supposed to be finished 15 years ago, and it's gone way over. But this goes back to what you were talking about before about just a lack of accountability. You know, it's just ridiculous.
Have you driven up the 99?
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah, you drive through Fresno, drive through some areas up there. You'll see. Yeah. You know, you're getting it built.
Yeah.
In about 15 years, you're going to be able to get from Bakersfield to Modesto in a hurry, hypothetically.
Because that's going to appeal to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. I want to get to Modesto right now. Let me tell you. But you're going to see it all built up there.
Yeah.
And taking people's land away, but
yeah, not
a piece of track laid.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it just goes back to the fact that you have a government that doesn't. And this is what I tell people at town halls. I say, look, you're gonna go home tonight to a home that's in a state that's ruled largely by political leaders that don't care about you. I mean, you see it in like the high-speed rail situation. It's just so evident.
I think, and not to go too far back on, we talked about a little bit, or I talked a little bit earlier about the COVID thing and how that the in my opinion, the oppression that we went through in this state compared to other states.
Yeah,
it was. And the damage that did. Yeah. More and more, I see so many businesses that are just they're gone. Yeah. And they'll never come back.
Yeah, that's right. It's tragic.
We got to find a way to make it better to open up a business. Yeah. People often ask, like I said, I've owned a couple of businesses, you've had businesses. Yeah. So you're going to do it again, but not in this state. I know. Not a chance.
I know.
And that's sad.
It is sad. I mean, I think that we can... Yeah, there's so much to be done there, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, well, I wish we could find ways to do that. That's and hopefully some of our folks out there that listen to this can help you. It's they always say the first 100 days for any presidency is this, but I would say the first X amount of days for a governor. Yeah. What would be, say, 5 of the first things you would want to do as a governor? Yeah. What do you think?
Well, the first thing we need to do is I would sign an executive order to audit the bloated bureaucracy in Sacramento. I mean, let's just start with the low-hanging fruit. You've got who knows how many billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse that should be, in my view, given back to the people. You know, we should audit, and we should take the money that's been stolen from the people of California and give it back to them. But I would also declare a state of emergency on the homelessness crisis as well. And that's a conversation for another time, but that would be something else that I would strongly consider. And then you talked about small business, so doing things that we could roll out quickly that would incentivize not only businesses to stay here, but for people to start new businesses here. Following models like we see in Florida and Texas, which is why businesses are fleeing to those states. We need to look at our the corporate tax. I also believe that we should completely obliterate state income tax. That would be on the top 5 list for sure. We don't need a state income tax in California. Again, these are all issues that we could maybe unpack on other episodes. Yeah. But yeah, those would be a few that would definitely make the top 5.
Not having the state income tax would be great.
Exactly.
People don't realize how much you pay in state income tax and how it changes our whole state. I mean, I'll take a sports fan. Yeah. If you're a football fan, you're a baseball fan, and you want that star player to come to your team. Yeah, he's not going to come because of what he has to pay in taxes here. I know. All those, and that just kind of brings it home to people. You're like, wait, so he could go go play in Las Vegas and pay 0 state income tax.
Yeah.
Or he could come here and pay 14.4%, which I think it is now. It's over 14%.
Yeah.
Well, that's 14% taken out of your pocket. Why? Yeah. What's their incentive to come here?
I know. And so that's the thing is that you look at states like like Florida where they have and there's 9 states in the U.S. that have no state income tax. People talk a lot about Florida and Texas, but there's others.
Oh, Tennessee's out there. Absolutely. There's a bunch of them.
Exactly. And then you have like Governor DeSantis who now wants to do away with property tax. And it's like, well, how do that, it can be done. Part of the problem with California is because of these oppressive regulations, you have people that are leaving and businesses that are leaving, so you have less taxable activity, and so the individual's getting bombarded with more taxes, but the state economy is just getting worse, So, yeah,
that would be a pretty unique way of doing it. It would be a great way of doing it. Eliminate the state income tax by growing business, so you don't have to have it.
Exactly.
I like that idea a lot. So.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, where can people find you? What's the best way?
Yep. Visit restoreca.org. That'd be a good starting point. Restoreca.org.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's and be honest, it takes money to run for these things. So people could go on there and donate to the cause.
Yeah, they can go to the site. They can join the movement by just entering their email. There's also an option for them to donate from the site as well.
Good.
Yeah.
I know it's never a fun thing to talk about, but it's a reality.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's expensive, and but yeah, we've had people donating so far, and it's been encouraging just to partner with people in that way. But yeah, all that can be done at restoreca.org.
No, I think that's great. So they could get on there, and you're going to be opening up offices around the state. Is that the plan, or how does that work?
That's the plan. Yeah, we're actually starting to see kind of these grassroots movements that are springing out of the Restore California movement, where people are taking initiatives in areas like Orange County, Temecula, that are coming to our events that just say, "Hey, I want to be your ambassador, so to speak, in my area, in my community." And so we're definitely seeing those things start to unfold.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's great. I think we got about an hour in here. I think it covered quite a few things. Is there anything we didn't cover that you would like to highlight?
I mean, there's just so many things we could discuss in terms of what is impacting California. But again, if your audience wants to visit restoreca.org, they'll find more information on my policy positions. But also, I'll mention I've got a YouTube channel that really takes a deeper dive into my stance on different positions. I got over 100 videos on YouTube, so just go to YouTube at Restore California, and there's a wealth of information there as well.
And I think more and more people are doing that, so that I could definitely see where the YouTube channels are taking off. And we know that's where people are getting their information now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I don't think you're going to get it from the mainstream media anymore.
No, I know.
I hate to see it.
I know.
Yeah, I think back to when I was a kid sitting in front of the TV watching news.
Yeah.
Yeah, I from the time I was little, I did that. It was just what you did.
That's right.
Yeah, I would. Now it's YouTube, so get on there. And what is it again on YouTube?
Just go to Restore California.
Restore California for
Restore
YouTube.
California. Yep.
Outstanding. Well, very good. I appreciate it. Thank you much for coming up here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Chuck.
Be here anytime.
Awesome.
Anytime. Let's get the word out. And let's try and restore California. I like that. Let's take the state back.
Yes, sir.
The way it should be.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.